Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine cold, real cold, the kind that burns your throat when you breathe. Meanwhile, in December 1200 AD, medieval Ireland, Crusader knights are returning with relics, bones they claim belong to St. Nicholas himself, and someone has to dig the grave, not a bishop, not a monk, just you, Thomas, a mason who works with stone and frozen earth. For the next 3 hours, frost-covered ground, limestone dust, wood smoke, and the strange peace of simple labour in the coldest month of the year. This is a story meant for sleep. If you drift away, perfect. There's no drama here, no danger, just winter work, patient and slow. Let's begin. It's 3 hours past dawn. You step out of your small cottage into air so cold it hangs visible in thick clouds. The settlement of Newtown Jerpoint spreads along the River Nore. Timber buildings, thatched roofs, white with frost, narrow paths worn into frozen mud. Your tools wait where you left them. Iron spades, picks forged at Jerpoint Abbey, chisels for limestone, each one known to your hands through years of use. The church stands 50 paces away, stone walls built thick against Irish weather, and inside, near the altar, you've been asked to build something unusual, a crypt. The knights will arrive in days, perhaps a week, if the roads stay passable. They carry a reliquary. What it truly contains, you cannot say. But your task is simple. Dig into frozen ground, build stone walls, create a burial space worthy of what might be sacred. So take a breath. Notice where your body meets the surface beneath you. Let that weight settle completely, and allow the cold December earth of medieval Ireland to ground you. It's 3 hours past dawn on a December morning in the year of our Lord 1200. You step out of your small cottage into air so cold it burns your throat, breath visible in thick clouds that hang in the stillness. The pathway to the church grounds crunches beneath your boots, each footfall breaking through the thin crust of frost that formed overnight. The sky is the colour of old iron. Low clouds press down on the valley of the River Nore, trapping the smoke from morning fires, creating a haze that turns everything soft and grey. The settlement of Newtown spreads along the riverbank, a collection of timber buildings and stone structures, thatched roofs, white with frost, narrow paths worn into the mud between dwellings. You are Thomas, though few in the settlement use names with such formality. You are the digger, the cutter, the one who works the earth and stone around the church of St. Nicholas. Your father held this position before you. His father before that. The work passes through families like the land itself, generation to generation. The knowledge of soil and rock transferred through years of watching and doing. Your tools wait where you left them yesterday evening. A row of iron implements leaning against the stone wall of the tool shed, spades with ash handles, worn smooth by decades of use, picks with heads forged by the smith at Jerpoint Abbey, heavy and balanced for breaking frozen ground, chisels of various sizes for working limestone, a wooden mallet, its head scarred by countless strikes. Each tool is known to you. Each has its purpose and its proper care. The church stands 50 paces from where you gather your implements. It is not a grand structure. Stone walls built thick against the Irish weather, a steep roof of wooden shingles, small windows with wooden shutters currently closed against the cold. The church is perhaps 40 paces long and 20 wide, oriented east to west as churches must be. The altar at the eastern end where morning light will eventually strike the cross. Around the church the graveyard spreads across a quarter acre. Some stones mark the resting places of local families, the merchants, the craftsmen, the wives who died in childbirth, the children who did not survive their first winter. Other stones are cruder, simply placed rocks indicating burials of the poor, those whose families could not afford carved markers. The ground here has been consecrated. The dead rest in holy earth, awaiting resurrection. You have been told that something unusual is coming to this place. The news arrived 3 days ago, carried by a messenger who rode from Thomastown, where the Norman lords maintain their seat of power. The messenger spoke with Father Coleman, the priest who tends this church, and the souls of Newtown's residents. You were not present for that conversation, but you heard the outcome quickly enough. Word spreads fast in a settlement this size. Crusader knights are returning from the east. Norman families who went to fight in distant lands, who participated in battles you can barely imagine, who saw cities you will never visit. They are coming home, and they are bringing relics. The specific nature of these relics was explained to you yesterday by Father Coleman himself. You had been sharpening tools in the shed when he approached, his wool robes gathering mud at the hem, his breath visible in the cold air. "Thomas," he said, "I must speak with you about preparations." You set down the whetstone and listened. The knights, Father Coleman explained, claim to carry the bones of St. Nicholas himself. Nicholas of Myra, the bishop who lived in the time of Constantine, the protector of children and sailors. The saint whose feast day is celebrated each December 6th, whose generosity formed the basis of countless stories and customs. They say, Father Coleman continued, his voice carrying doubt and wonder in equal measure, that they obtained these relics during their journeys, that they have carried them across seas and through kingdoms, that they wish to enter them here, in our church, in ground that belongs to their family lands. You had questions. Of course you had questions. But you are not a man of great education or theological training. You are a digger, a worker of earth and stone. Your questions were practical. Where will the burial take place, you asked? Near the altar, Father Coleman said. Inside the church itself. A place of honour. We will need a crypt prepared. Stonework? Your skills will be essential. And so your work has changed. For the past 3 days, you have been engaged in preliminary tasks, clearing the area inside the church where the crypt will be constructed, taking measurements, examining the foundation to ensure it can support additional stonework, planning the dimensions and depth required for such an undertaking. This morning, the actual excavation begins. You carry your tools across the frost-covered ground to the church. The door is heavy oak, reinforced with iron bands. It moves slowly on its hinges, opening into the cool darkness of the interior. No fire burns inside. Churches are not heated. The cold is part of the devotional experience, a reminder of earthly suffering, a foretaste of purgatory for those whose sins are not yet absolved. The interior smells of old stone, beeswax from candles, and the faint mustiness of wool vestments stored in the sacristy. Your footsteps echo slightly on the packed earth floor. The space feels larger than its actual dimensions, an effect created by the high ceiling and the dim light filtering through narrow windows. The spot for the crypt has been marked. Father Coleman placed stones in a rectangle near the altar, defining an area approximately 3 paces long and 2 paces wide. This will be the final resting place. This ordinary patch of earth inside a small Irish church will become, if the claims are true, the tomb of one of Christendom's most venerated saints. You set down your tools and begin. The first task is to remove the top layer of earth. The floor here is packed dirt, compacted by years of foot traffic, worn smooth by generations of worshippers who have knelt and stood and processed through this space. You work with a flat spade, cutting into the surface in a grid pattern, loosening sections that can be lifted away. The work is cold. Your hands, even wrapped in wool, feel the chill of the iron handle. Your breath forms clouds that dissipate slowly in the still air. The sound of the spade cutting earth is sharp, rhythmic, a pattern of strike and lift and dump that becomes almost meditative. As you work, you think about the strangeness of this task. St. Nicholas died more than 800 years ago. His original burial place was Myra, a city in lands now held by the Turks. The stories say that Italian sailors took his bones to Bari, where a great basilica was built to house them. Other stories speak of Venice, of additional relics, of the division of holy remains among cities and churches competing for the spiritual prestige such artifacts bring. And now, Crusader knights claim to have brought some portion of these relics here, to Ireland, to Kilkenny. to this small church that serves a settlement of perhaps 300 souls. It could be true. Stranger things have been documented. The movement of relics is a known practice. Saints' bones travel. They are divided, distributed, carried to new locations where they might work miracles, draw pilgrims, sanctify ground. The bones of martyrs rest beneath altars throughout Christendom. Fragments of true crosses, pieces of saints' clothing, even drops of holy blood are housed in reliquaries and venerated by the faithful. It could also be false. You have heard stories of fraudulent relics, of merchants who sell splinters of wood claimed to be from Noah's Ark, of bone fragments said to belong to apostles, but which might just as easily come from any person or even from animals. The market for holy objects is lucrative. The desire to possess such objects is strong. Where desire and profit meet, deception often follows. But these considerations are beyond your purview. You are not qualified to authenticate relics. You cannot judge the truth of the knight's claims. Your task is simpler and more concrete. Dig a crypt that will properly house whatever the knights bring. Construct stone walls that will protect and commemorate. Create a burial space worthy of the honour being attributed to it. You work steadily through the morning. The top layer of earth comes up relatively easily. Below that, the soil is darker, damp, less compacted. You switch to a narrower spade, working around the perimeter first, defining the edges of the excavation. The goal is to dig down 3 feet, deep enough for a stone-lined chamber, shallow enough that you can work without elaborate supports or staging. The church bell rings at midday. Father Coleman emerges from the sacristy and watches you work for a few moments. He says nothing. You continue digging. After a time he leaves, his footsteps fading as he returns to the small house beside the church where he lives alone, tended by a widow from the settlement who cooks his meals and cleans his rooms. You pause your work to eat. Bread and cheese, wrapped in cloth, carried from your cottage this morning. You eat standing, looking at the excavation you have begun. Already it takes shape, a rectangular hole, the beginning of something permanent. The afternoon brings a change in the weather. The iron-grey clouds begin to release snow. Small flakes at first, barely visible in the dim light filtering through the windows, then more substantial. You can hear it on the roof, a soft whisper, the accumulation of winter. You continue working. The excavation deepens, 1 foot, then 2. The soil changes again as you go deeper. More clay content, heavier, stickier, harder to lift. You adjust your technique, using the pick to break it up first, then shoveling out the loosened material. Your back begins to ache. This is normal. Expected. Part of the work. You straighten periodically, pressing your hands against your lower spine, feeling the vertebrae crack and resettle. The ache is not injury. It is simply labour. The cost of working earth that does not want to be moved. By the time light begins to fail, you have completed the bulk of the excavation. The crypt is now approximately 3 feet deep across its entire area. The walls of the excavation are relatively straight. The bottom is level, checked by eye and by a length of cord stretched across the diagonal. Tomorrow, you will begin the stonework, laying a foundation, building up walls that will line the crypt and support whatever monument is placed above it. But for today, the earthwork is done. You gather your tools. The spades are cleaned with a wooden scraper, removing the worst of the mud. The picks are inspected for damage. Everything is returned to the shed, arranged in its proper place, ready for tomorrow's use. Outside, the snow has covered the settlement. The roofs are white. The paths are becoming difficult to distinguish from the open ground between buildings. The cold has deepened with nightfall. Your breath is thick and hangs in the air like something solid. You return to your cottage, a single room with a hearth at one end. The fire has been banked all day, coals buried under ash to preserve them. You add wood, carefully arranged pieces that will catch quickly, and blow gently until flames appear. Heat spreads slowly. You remove your boots, caked with mud and snow. Your wool socks are damp. You place them near the fire to dry, though not so close they will scorch. Your hands are red from cold and rough from the day's work. You hold them toward the flames, feeling the ache of warming flesh. You prepare a simple meal. Porridge made from oats and water, thickened over the fire, seasoned with a pinch of salt. You eat directly from the pot, using a wooden spoon. The food is plain but filling, fuel for tomorrow's work. After eating, you tend to small tasks, checking that the cottage door is secure, ensuring the fire is safe, preparing the clothes you will wear tomorrow. Everything has its place. Everything follows routine. You lie down on your pallet, wool blankets, straw underneath, not comfortable by any grand standard, but sufficient. The fire crackles. Snow whispers against the thatched roof. The darkness is complete once you close your eyes. Tomorrow you will begin the stonework. Tomorrow the crypt will start to take permanent form. Tomorrow the work continues, but tonight you rest, as the settlement rests, as the earth beneath the church rests, having yielded to your labour, as winter itself seems to rest in the cold stillness between one day and the next. The bones, if they are indeed the bones of St. Nicholas, are still in transit, still being carried across lands and through villages, still days or perhaps weeks away from their final destination. But the place that will receive them is being prepared, stone by stone, hour by hour, through the work of ordinary hands in an ordinary settlement where extraordinary claims are about to be tested by the simple reality of burial. You sleep. The settlement sleeps. Only the snow continues its quiet work, building depth, erasing boundaries, transforming the familiar landscape into something softer and more mysterious. Morning arrives grey and muted. The snow has stopped, leaving perhaps 4 inches of accumulation across the settlement. You wake to the cold, to the familiar routine of rising, to the sequence of tasks that begins each day. Fire first. The coals from last night are still alive under their blanket of ash. You add kindling, blow carefully until flames appear. Feed larger pieces once the fire establishes itself. The cottage warms slowly. You dress in layers, wool undergarments, linen shirt, wool tunic, heavy wool cloak, leather boots lined with felt. You eat quickly. Yesterday's bread, hard now, but softened by dipping in heated water. A piece of dried fish, the remains of the porridge pot, scraped clean with the wooden spoon. The mortar you will use for the crypt requires lime, not the small amounts kept in the church stores, but significant quantities. Fresh lime, properly prepared. This means a visit to the lime kiln 3 miles north of the settlement. You make the journey through fields covered with frost that crunches under your boots. The kiln is operated by 2 brothers, both older than you, both bearing the permanent dust of their trade in the lines of their faces and the white powder that seems embedded in their skin no matter how thoroughly they wash. The kiln itself is a stone structure, beehive-shaped, perhaps 15 feet tall. The smell of it reaches you long before you arrive. Burnt stone, acrid smoke. The chemical transformation of limestone into quicklime creates odours that are harsh and unpleasant, but also strangely compelling. The smell of change, of substance being forced from one state into another. Thomas, the elder brother, greets you. His name is William. You come for lime? A large order, you confirm. I am building a crypt. I need enough for solid mortar, enough to last. William nods and gestures to the kiln. We have fresh lime, just finished burning yesterday. Good quality. The stone came from the quarry at Jer Point, same as what you're probably using for your crypt. You follow him to the storage shed, where the quicklime is kept in sealed barrels. The material is dangerous in its pure form. Caustic. It burns skin and blinds eyes if you're careless. But mixed properly with sand and water, it becomes mortar that will bind stone to stone with strength that lasts for generations. How much do you need? William asks. You calculate quickly. The dimensions of the crypt, the thickness of mortar joints, the multiple courses of stone, Safety margin for waste and error. £10, you say, perhaps 12 to be certain. William and his brother measure out the lime carefully, pouring it from the large storage barrels into smaller containers you can carry. Each pound is weighed on a balance scale, verified, sealed. This is not material to be casual about. Too little and your mortar will be weak. Too much creates other problems. Building for the Normans? William's brother asks. His name is John, and he is more talkative than William. For the church, you clarify. But yes, Norman knights are involved. They claim to bring holy relics. We heard the stories, John says. Bones of St. Nicholas himself, they say. Do you believe it? You consider how to answer. These men are not nobility or clergy. They work with their hands as you do. They will understand practical truth better than theological certainty. I believe they brought bones, you say, carefully. Whether those bones are who they claim, I cannot say. But the crypt I build will hold them securely regardless. William nods approvingly. Good answer. Do the work right. Let others argue about the meaning. You pay for the lime with coins Father Coleman provided. The price is fair. These brothers are honest in their trade, as you try to be in yours. The lime is good quality. It will serve. The walk back takes longer because of the weight you carry. The containers are heavy and awkward, but you pace yourself, stopping to rest when needed, refusing to rush and risk dropping the precious material. By the time you return to the settlement, your arms ache and your shoulders burn from the sustained effort. But you have what you need. Good lime, properly prepared, ready to be mixed with sand and water to create mortar that will bind the crypt together and make it permanent. You store the lime carefully in the shed, keeping it dry, protecting it from moisture that would ruin it before you can use it. Tomorrow you will begin mixing. Tomorrow the real work of building will intensify. But tonight you rest. The journey was tiring but successful. Another task completed. Another step toward the finished crypt. The next morning you begin the work of mixing mortar. This is an art that requires attention and adjustment, especially in winter. The cold affects everything. Water wants to freeze. Lime reacts differently in low temperatures. Sand can be frozen in clumps that must be broken apart before use. You begin early, before the sun is fully risen, working in the dim light that filters through the shed's small window. The workspace is barely large enough for the mixing trough. A wooden container, perhaps 4 feet long and 2 feet wide, lined with old cloth to prevent the mixture from seeping through joints in the wood. First, the sand. You measure it by volume using a wooden bucket. 3 full buckets of sand for each one of lime. This is the ratio your father taught you, the ratio his father taught him. It has proven reliable across decades of work. The sand must be clean, free of organic matter that will decay, free of salt that will weaken the mortar. You run your hands through it before adding it to the trough, feeling for impurities, checking the texture. Good sand has a certain grit, a consistency that you cannot easily describe but recognize immediately through touch. Next, the lime. This requires more care. The powder is still caustic, even though it has been burned and aged. You wear old leather gloves, cracked and stained but still protective. You measure the lime carefully, adding it to the sand in the trough, noting how the white powder sits atop the grey-brown sand like snow on earth. Then comes the mixing. You use a hoe, pushing and pulling through the dry materials, ensuring complete integration before any water is added. This dry mixing is crucial. If lime and sand are not fully combined before water is introduced, the mortar will be inconsistent. Weak in some places, too strong in others, unreliable. The mixing is physical work. Your shoulders and back engage with each stroke of the hoe. The dry materials resist, wanting to stay separate, requiring persistent effort to force them together. You work steadily, rhythmically, until the mixture is uniform throughout. No pockets of pure lime, no areas of just sand, everything blended. Only then do you begin adding water, slowly, a little at a time. You pour from a wooden bucket, watching how the mixture absorbs the liquid, seeing the transformation from powder to paste. Too much water at once, and the mortar becomes soupy, unusable. You must add it gradually, mixing constantly, checking the consistency after each addition. The right texture is somewhere between thick porridge and soft clay. It should hold together when squeezed, but also spread smoothly under a trowel. This judgment comes from experience. There is no measurement for the water, no formula that accounts for every variable. You must feel it, know it, recognize when the mixture has reached the proper state. In winter, this is especially difficult. The cold affects how the water interacts with the lime and sand. The mixture may seem right, but then stiffen too quickly as the temperature works against you. Or it may seem too wet, but then be perfect once you begin using it on cold stone. You mix a test batch first, a smaller amount. You try it on a scrap piece of limestone, seeing how it spreads, how it holds, how it behaves over the course of an hour as it begins to set. Only when you're satisfied do you mix the larger batch that you will actually use in the crypt. This process takes most of the morning. By the time you have mortar ready to use, you've been working for hours. Your hands are sore from gripping the hoe. Your back aches from bending over the trough. Your forearms burn from the sustained effort. But the mortar is good. You know this with certainty. It will bond the stones properly. It will cure hard and strong. It will last for centuries if the crypt is maintained and protected from the worst weather. Outside, the settlement is beginning to stir. Smoke rises from chimneys. Paths are being cleared through the snow. A dog barks somewhere. The normal sounds of a winter morning in a place where life continues regardless of weather or season. You make your way to the church. Your footprints are the first on this particular path today. The snow compresses under your boots with a satisfying crunch. The air is still very cold, but the wind has died completely. Without wind, the cold is more bearable, sharp but not cutting. The church door resists slightly, ice having formed overnight around the base. You push harder, and it gives. Inside, the space is exactly as cold as the outside. Stone does not generate heat. It only holds whatever temperature surrounds it. The excavation from yesterday is unchanged. The rectangular hole near the altar, now shadowed in the dim morning light, waiting for the next phase of work. Today's task requires different tools. You return to the shed and gather what you need. A handcart, its wooden wheel creaking slightly as you roll it across the frozen ground. Rope, a pry bar, your chisels and mallet, a wooden T-square for checking angles. The stones you need are already here. In a sense, the settlement sits on limestone. The bedrock beneath is limestone. Every field for miles around contains limestone outcroppings, broken pieces, fragments that have worked their way to the surface through centuries of freezing and thawing. Stone is not scarce. The right stone, properly shaped, takes effort to obtain. But Father Coleman has made arrangements. A load of cut limestone blocks was delivered 2 months ago, payment for work the church commissioned from the quarry at Jerpoint. The blocks are stacked behind the shed, each one roughly rectangular, each weighing perhaps 40 pounds. They are not perfectly uniform, but they're close enough for your purposes. You load blocks onto the handcart. 6 at a time is the most you can manage without risking damage to the cart or injury to yourself. The weight is substantial. The cart's wheel cuts a visible track through the snow as you push it toward the church. Inside, you unload the stones next to the excavation. They will need to be arranged carefully, built up layer by layer to create the walls of the crypt. The bottom course will rest directly on the soil at the base of the excavation. Each subsequent course will be offset slightly from the one below, creating a stable, interlocking structure. You carry the mortar to the church in wooden buckets, moving carefully to avoid spilling. Each bucket is heavy, awkward, requiring 2 hands and careful attention to footing. You select the 6 largest, flattest blocks from the pile. These will form the base. You lower yourself into the excavation, feeling the cold earthen walls close around you. The bottom is firm, having had a night to settle after yesterday's work. The first block goes in the northwest corner. You position it carefully, checking with the T-square to ensure it sits level. If the foundation is not level, nothing built upon it will be true. You make minute adjustments, scraping away small amounts of soil, placing thin stone shards as shims where needed. When you are satisfied, you move to the next block. The work is slow and precise. Each block must be positioned correctly. Each must be checked and rechecked. There is no hurry. There is only the work itself, the patient accumulation of correct decisions that will result eventually in a proper structure. The morning passes in this fashion. Block by block, the first course takes shape. By the time the weak winter sun reaches its highest point, you have laid the entire bottom course of the crypt's walls. A rectangle of stone set firmly into the earth, level in all directions, ready to receive the next layer. You climb out of the excavation and sit on the edge, legs dangling into the space below. Your back aches from bending. Your hands are cold despite the work. You eat the midday meal you brought: bread, cheese, an apple that has begun to wrinkle but remains edible. While you eat, you consider the next steps. The walls must rise 2 feet above the current floor level. This will require multiple courses of stone. Each course must be mortared, must be allowed to cure before the next is added. The work will span days, possibly a week, if the weather turns worse. Father Coleman enters while you're eating. He approaches the excavation and looks down at your progress. "Good work," he says. "Solid." You nod acknowledgement. "The knights have sent word," Father Coleman continues. "They will arrive in 10 days' time, perhaps sooner if the roads remain passable." 10 days. You calculate rapidly. It is enough time if you work steadily, if the weather cooperates, if no complications arise. The crypt walls can be completed in 6 days of good work. The capstones will take another day to position. That leaves time for the finishing details, for any adjustments that might be needed. "It will be ready," you tell him. Father Coleman nods slowly. "There will be a ceremony," he says. "When the relics arrive, the bishop from Ossory will come. Perhaps the Norman lords from Thomastown. It will be significant." You understand what he's not saying directly. This small church, this ordinary place of worship, will briefly become a centre of attention. Important people will be present. What you build here will be observed and judged by eyes accustomed to greater works, to cathedrals and monasteries, to the grand churches of England and France. The pressure of this knowledge sits uncomfortably. You are a skilled worker, but your skills have always been employed in modest contexts. Practical repairs, simple graves, maintenance work that, while necessary, attracts no particular notice. But there is no point in worrying about judgments you cannot control. You can only do the work as well as you know how. The stones will be placed correctly, or they will not. The structure will be sound, or it will not. Your skill is what it is, developed through years of practice, limited by the circumstances of your birth and training. "I will do my best," you say, which is the only promise you can honestly make. Father Coleman seems satisfied with this. He departs. You finish your meal and return to work. The afternoon is devoted to beginning the second course of stones. Working quickly, before the mortar can stiffen, you spread a layer on top of the first course. The mortar is pale grey, smooth when properly mixed, cool and slightly gritty under the trowel. The second course begins. Each block is positioned, pressed down into the mortar, checked for level, adjusted as needed. The mortar squeezes out from the joints. You scrape away the excess, using it to fill gaps, to ensure complete coverage. No voids should remain. Every space between stones should be filled with mortar. The light fails early in December. By mid-afternoon, the interior of the church is too dark to work safely. You could bring candles or oil lamps, but the risk of fire is too great. Better to stop when you can no longer see clearly. You clean your tools. Mortar that dries on iron is difficult to remove. You scrape each trowel and chisel clean, then wash them in a bucket of water, The water will freeze overnight, but that does not matter. Tomorrow, you will break the ice and begin again. Your hands are raw from the cold and the lime. Lime is caustic. It dries the skin, creates cracks that are slow to heal in winter. Your father's hands were the same. Permanent damage from years of working with lime and stone. It is part of the trade, an expected cost. You return to your cottage as darkness settles completely over the settlement. The path is familiar enough to navigate without light, though you walk carefully. A turned ankle now would disrupt the work schedule. The evening routine unfolds. Fire, food, the slow warming of flesh that has been cold all day. You sit close to the hearth, hands extended toward the flames, feeling the burn of returning circulation. Tomorrow you will continue with the second course, then the third, then the fourth. Layer by layer, the walls will rise, the crypt will take its final form. The structure will be complete, and then the nights will arrive. The relics will be presented. Whatever truth or fiction they represent will be placed in the space you're creating. The ground will close around them. The mystery will be buried along with the bones. But these considerations are for later. Tonight, there is only the fire, the cottage, the darkness outside, and the sleep that comes from honest labour. You lie down on your pallet and pull the blankets close. The fire crackles. Somewhere in the settlement, a baby cries. The sound carries in the cold, clear air. Gradually, it fades. The night deepens. You sleep. The work on the crypt continues through the following days, with a rhythm that becomes meditative. Wake before dawn. Build the fire. Eat simple food. Walk to the church through cold that bites at exposed skin. Work until light fails. Return to the cottage. Sleep. Repeat. Take a breath here. Notice the rhythm already forming. The pattern of days. How the body follows what it knows. Each day brings incremental progress. Another course of stones added to the crypt walls. Another layer of mortar applied and smoothed. The structure rises from the excavation like something being born from the earth itself, slow and patient and inevitable. Your tools become extensions of your hands. The trowel that spreads mortar has been yours for 15 years, its wooden handle worn smooth by constant use, shaped to fit your grip perfectly. The blade is steel, kept clean after each use, the edge straight and true. When you hold it, you do not think about holding it. Your hand simply knows what to do. Feel your own hands now, wherever they rest, heavy, warm, requiring nothing. The same is true of the other implements. The mallet, its head scarred by thousands of strikes against chisel and stone. The level, a length of wood with a bubble trapped in liquid that shows when a surface is true. The measuring cord, knotted at precise intervals, allowing you to mark out dimensions without arithmetic or written calculation. These tools were your father's before they were yours. Some pieces go back further still. The largest chisel, heavy and broad-bladed, forged when smithing, was an art that left marks of quality in every piece. The metal is old but sound, reliable, unchanging. You maintain these tools with the same care your father taught you. Metal is cleaned and oiled against rust. Wood is checked for cracks. Handles are tightened. This maintenance is not separate from the work itself. It is part of the work, as essential as mixing mortar or laying stone. Another breath. Let your shoulders drop a little more. There is nothing to hold up right now. The knowledge of how to use these tools was not learned from books. Knowledge passes through demonstration and practice, through years of watching and doing, through the patient accumulation of skill. Your hands know things your mind cannot articulate. They know how mortar should feel when it is properly mixed. They know the sound a chisel makes when it cuts cleanly. This knowledge is carried in muscle memory, in the calluses on your palms, in the way your back tells you when to straighten before strain becomes injury. The work has taught your body its own wisdom, slowly, over years, until the movements are as natural as breathing. As natural as breathing. In and out, the body doing what it knows how to do. And so the work continues, stone upon stone, layer upon layer, the rhythm of the trade, the ancient pattern of building that has been the same for generations, and will be the same for generations more. Nothing changes. Nothing needs to change. The work is enough. 4 days of work have passed. The crypt walls now stand 2 feet above the church floor, exactly as planned. 4 courses of stone, each properly mortared, each level and plumb. The structure is sound. You are confident in this. Your hands know stone. Your eyes know when work is done correctly. The capstones remain to be placed. These are larger blocks, cut to span the width of the crypt, creating a solid top that will support whatever monument or marker is eventually positioned above. The capstones are heavy, requiring careful handling and precise placement. But before the capstones, there is another task, one that Father Coleman requested yesterday evening when he came to inspect your progress. "We need a marker," he said, "something carved into the stone, something that identifies whose remains lie here." You nodded. This makes sense. Without identification, the crypt could be any burial. The sanctity depends partly on knowledge, on people understanding what they are venerating. "What should it say?" you asked. Father Coleman thought for a moment. His name, obviously, Sanctus Nicholas, and perhaps the date of his death, though there is some uncertainty about that. December 6th is his feast day, but the exact year... He trailed off, then refocused. Put the name clearly. That is what matters. Carving stone is a different skill than building with it. Related, but distinct. You have done inscription work before, but always in Latin, which you do not read. You copy letters shown to you by Father Coleman, reproducing the shapes carefully, without understanding the meaning. Father Coleman provided a drawing. The letters spelled out cleanly on parchment. Sanctus Nicholas Myra. St. Nicholas of Myra, simple, direct, claiming the connection to the original burial site, even as the bones, if authentic, now rest far from that place. You select one of the capstones for the inscription, the smoothest one with the finest grain, positioned to be at the head of the crypt where it will be most visible. You use chalk to mark out the letters, spacing them evenly, ensuring they will fit properly within the available space. The carving itself requires different tools. Smaller chisels, struck with lighter mallets. The work is delicate compared to breaking ground or laying stone. Each letter must be formed clearly. The depth must be consistent. The lines must be straight or curved as required by the letter form. You begin with the first letter. S, a serpentine curve. You work carefully, tapping the chisel with controlled strikes, removing stone in small increments. The limestone chips away cleanly. This is good stone for carving. Not so hard that it resists the tool, not so soft that it crumbles unexpectedly. The work demands concentration. You must pay attention to the grain of the stone, to the way it wants to split, to the resistance under the chisel. A careless strike could ruin the letter, could create a crack that propagates beyond the intended mark. The first letter takes an hour to complete. You step back and examine it. The S is clearly formed, properly proportioned, carved to a depth of perhaps a 1/4 inch. It will be visible, even in dim light. It will endure as long as the stone itself endures. You continue with the next letter. A. This is simpler in some ways, being composed of straight lines rather than curves. But the angles must be correct. The crossbar must be positioned properly. You work with the same careful attention, strike by strike, chip by chip. The day passes in this manner. Letter by letter, the inscription takes form. Sanctus Nicola. By evening, you have completed most of the words. 7 letters remain for tomorrow. You gather the tools and sweep the stone dust into a pile. This dust will be mixed with mortar later, used to fill small gaps or smooth joints. Nothing is wasted in this work. Every material has value and purpose. The walk back to your cottage feels longer than usual. The cold has deepened again. The sky is clear for the first time in days, which means the temperature will drop significantly overnight. Clear skies in winter provide no insulation. Heat escapes upward into the vast darkness, leaving the earth to freeze hard. You warm yourself by the fire and prepare food. Your hands shake slightly from the day's work. Precise carving uses different muscles than heavy labour. The sustained concentration leaves you feeling drained in a different way than the exhaustion of digging or hauling stone. You eat, tend the fire, and prepare for sleep. Tomorrow you will finish the inscription. Tomorrow the capstones will be ready for placement. Tomorrow the structural work will be complete. The crypt itself will be finished. Then comes the waiting for whatever will fill it. The next morning you complete the inscription, Sanctus Nicolaus Myra. The letters are clear and properly formed, cut with what skill you possess, made permanent in limestone that will outlast any person who reads them. As you finish the final letter, Father Coleman approaches with another request. I have been thinking, he says, watching you brush away the last stone dust, about how future generations will know who built this crypt, who did this work. You pause and look at him, not understanding immediately. A mason's mark, Father Coleman clarifies, something carved into the stone, a symbol that identifies you as the builder. This is not uncommon practice. You have seen such marks on other structures. Churches built by skilled craftsmen often bear small symbols, usually geometric shapes or stylized initials, placed discreetly where they will not detract from the overall design, but will remain as testament to the builder's work. Where would such a mark go, you ask? On one of the capstones, Father Coleman suggests. Small, in a corner, something that will endure but not compete with the main inscription. You consider this. The idea appeals to you more than you expected. Not from pride exactly, but from a desire to be remembered, to leave some trace beyond the anonymous accumulation of your labour. What symbol should I use, you ask? That is for you to decide, Father Coleman says. Masons traditionally use simple marks. A cross, a triangle, your initials if you know how to form them. Something that can be carved quickly, but recognised as distinct. You think about this through the rest of the day. What mark would represent you? What symbol would tell future generations, assuming any of them care or notice, that Thomas of Jerpoint built this structure? Your father had a mark, a simple T shape, crossed in the middle by a horizontal line. You saw it on several stones he placed in the churchyard wall, small marks that most people never noticed, but which he showed you with quiet satisfaction. That is my work, he would say. That stone will be there long after I am dust. You could use his mark, carry on the tradition, let the T stand for Thomas, for your father's name and your own. But something makes you hesitate. Your father's mark was his. To use it feels like claiming his identity rather than asserting your own. You need something different, something that is yours alone. In the end, you decide on a simple design, a hammer shape, stylized and geometric, with a square head and straight handle. The hammer is the tool most associated with your trade in the minds of those who do not work stone. It is recognizable and simple enough to carve quickly. The next morning, before beginning the day's regular work, you take your smallest chisel and carve the mark into the corner of the largest capstone, the one that will be most visible, positioned at the head of the crypt. The hammer is perhaps 2 inches tall, carved to a depth of 1/4 inch, deep enough to last, small enough not to distract. When you finish, you step back and look at it. Your mark, your claim to this work. A small thing, easily overlooked, but permanent nonetheless. As long as this stone exists, this small carved hammer will exist, testament to your labour. Father Coleman comes to inspect it. He nods approval. Good, simple and clear. Future generations will know that Thomas the Mason built this crypt with his own hands. You feel a warm satisfaction at this. Not pride in the conventional sense, but something quieter. Acknowledgement. The work was done, and now it is marked as yours. That is enough. The inscription is complete. The mason's mark is carved. The capstones have been positioned, mortared into place, forming a solid top to the crypt. The structure is finished. What remains is finishing work, smoothing the mortar joints, cleaning stone dust from every surface, making the space presentable for the ceremony that will mark the deposit of the relics. And now, the waiting. The knights are expected tomorrow, or possibly the day after. The timing is uncertain. Travel in December is unpredictable, roads become impassable, rivers flood or freeze, weather can delay any journey by hours or days. Father Coleman is anxious. You can see it in how he moves through the church, checking details that do not need checking, rearranging items that are already properly arranged. The pressure of hosting important visitors, of presiding over a ceremony that might be historically significant, weighs on him visibly. You understand this pressure, though it does not affect you in the same way. Your responsibility ends with the crypt. You built it correctly. The structure is sound. Whatever happens afterward is not within your control or expertise. The settlement itself feels different. Word has spread about the expected arrival. Curiosity has infected the normal routine. People find excuses to walk past the church. Conversations turn repeatedly to speculation about the relics, about whether they are genuine, about what it might mean for Newtown to be the burial place of such a significant saint. You spend the day on maintenance tasks, repairing a section of the churchyard wall where frost has pushed stones out of alignment, clearing paths through what remains of last week's snow, checking the roof for any shingles that might have worked loose during recent winds. The work is ordinary, necessary, the kind of labour that continues regardless of extraordinary events. Walls need tending, paths need clearing, roofs need maintenance. The rhythm of these tasks is comfortable, familiar. In the afternoon, you notice a change in the air, a heaviness, a pressure that suggests approaching weather. You look to the west, toward the source of most storms in this region. The sky is darkening, not with the simple grey of winter clouds, but with something denser, more threatening. By evening the storm arrives, wind first, sudden and strong, pushing across the settlement, making buildings creak, tearing at thatched roofs, sending loose items tumbling through the paths. Then sleet, small pellets of ice driven nearly horizontal by the wind. Then snow, heavy and wet, accumulating rapidly. You secure your cottage as best you can. The door is barred. The shutters on the single window are closed and latched. The fire is built up, providing heat and light against the darkness that settles early under the storm clouds. The wind howls. It finds every gap in the thatch, every space between stones, every weakness in the cottage's defences against weather. Cold air infiltrates despite your preparations. You wrap yourself in every blanket you own and sit close to the fire. This is not unusual. Winter storms come. They pass. Life continues afterward. But the timing is unfortunate. If the knights are travelling in this weather, they will be delayed, possibly for days. The night is long and uncomfortable. The wind does not relent. The snow continues. You sleep fitfully, waking whenever a particularly strong gust shakes the cottage, or when the fire needs tending. Morning brings a strange quiet. The wind has stopped. The storm has passed, leaving behind a transformed landscape. Snow covers everything to a depth of perhaps 18 inches. Drifts against buildings and walls are much higher. The settlement is buried, muffled, stilled. You dig your way out of the cottage. The door opens inward, which is fortunate. Otherwise you would be trapped until someone dug you free. The path to the church is invisible under smooth snow. You break trail, each step sinking to your thigh, the effort exhausting. The church has weathered the storm. Stone does not care about wind or snow. Inside, everything is as you left it. The crypt stands ready. The floor is clean. The work is complete. But the knights have not arrived. They will not arrive today. Possibly not for several days, depending on conditions. in other parts of the region. Weather that dumps 18 inches of snow on Newtown may have brought twice that to higher elevations. Rivers may be impassable, roads may be blocked entirely. Father Coleman is distressed by this development, though he tries to hide it. God's timing, he says, with a smile that does not quite reach his eyes. We must be patient. Patience is easier when you do not feel personally responsible for the schedule. You return to ordinary tasks. The settlement requires digging out. Paths must be cleared. Access to the well must be restored. Animals need tending. Life continues despite the storm, though at a slower pace with greater effort. 3 days pass. The snow begins to melt, then freezes again at night, creating a landscape of ice and treacherous footing. No word comes from Thomastown. No messengers arrive. The settlement is isolated, connected to the larger world only by memory and speculation. On the 4th day after the storm, a rider appears. A single man on a horse approaching slowly, picking his way carefully along the partially cleared road. He brings news. The nights are delayed but safe. They have reached Thomastown, but will not proceed to Newtown until the roads improve. Perhaps 3 more days, perhaps a week. Father Coleman receives this news with visible relief. Delay is better than disaster. Better to wait than to hear that the relics were lost, that the knights perished, that this entire undertaking has been cancelled by tragedy. And so you wait. The crypt waits. The settlement waits. Winter settles in properly. The kind of deep cold that makes even noon feel like perpetual twilight. The work continues. The rhythms of daily survival assert themselves. But underneath the normalcy, there is anticipation. Something is coming. Bones from across the sea. Claims of sanctity. The weight of belief and doubt mixed together. The burial of what might be a saint or might be an ordinary person whose remains have been elevated by wishful thinking and pious fraud. You will dig no more. The earth has been moved, the stones have been placed, the inscription has been carved. What remains is the arrival of what will fill the space you have created, and that, like so much else in this world, is beyond your control. You can only wait, as the settlement waits, as winter waits, as the crypt itself waits beneath the cold stone floor of the Church of St. Nicholas in Newtown, County Kilkenny, in the year of our Lord 1200. 6 days have passed since the storm. The roads have cleared enough for travel, though conditions remain difficult. The frozen ruts and patches of ice make every journey slow and cautious. You wake to the sound of bells, not the familiar toll of the church bell marking hours, but multiple bells ringing together. The sound carries from the direction of Thomastown. A signal, an announcement. The knights are coming. You dress quickly and join the rest of the settlement as people emerge from cottages and workshops, drawn by the bells and by curiosity. The morning air is bitingly cold, the sky clear and pale, the kind of winter day where breath hangs visible and fingers go numb within minutes of exposure. Father Coleman stands outside the church, already vested in his ceremonial robes despite the cold, the white alb, the green chasuble reserved for special occasions. His hands are folded, his expression composed, but you notice the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes keep scanning the road from Thomastown. The procession becomes visible perhaps half an hour later, first as movement in the distance, dark shapes against the snow-covered fields, then as distinct forms, horses, riders, banners, the slow advance of people who carry something precious and move with appropriate solemnity. As they draw closer, details emerge. There are perhaps 20 riders in total. Most are men-at-arms, wearing mail under heavy cloaks, their weapons visible, but not drawn. Among them you identify the knights by their finer horses, their better equipment, their bearing that speaks of nobility and authority. In the centre of the procession, 2 riders flank a horse that carries no person but instead a covered platform balanced across its back. The platform is wrapped in cloth, deep blue wool, embroidered with gold thread. The shape underneath suggests a box or casket, perhaps 2 feet long and 1 foot wide, not large, but carried with the care that indicates profound value. The procession reaches the edge of the settlement and stops. One of the knights dismounts. He is perhaps 40 years old, his face weathered by sun and wind, a scar visible along his left cheek. He wears a surcoat bearing a device you do not recognize, crosses and lions combined in some heraldic pattern that means nothing to your eyes but clearly signifies family and lineage. Father Coleman steps forward. The 2 men speak, but you cannot hear their words from where you stand with the other villagers. The conversation is brief, formal, an exchange of greetings and acknowledgements. Then the knight gestures to his companions. 2 men carefully lift the wrapped platform from the horse. They carry it between them, moving with slow measured steps toward the church. The knight who spoke with Father Coleman walks ahead. Father Coleman falls in beside him. The rest of the procession follows at a respectful distance. The settlement watches in silence as the group enters the church. The doors remain open. After a moment of hesitation, some villagers begin to follow. You join them, curious to see what will happen next. Inside, the church is cold and dim. Someone has lit candles along the walls, their flames steady in the still air. The covered platform has been placed on a wooden trestle near the altar, positioned directly above, where the crypt waits beneath the floor. The knight who appears to be the leader steps forward. He speaks, his voice carrying in the stone space. "I am Robert de Frene," he says, "returned from the Holy Land and the kingdoms beyond. What I carry here is sacred. Bones of the blessed Nicholas, Bishop of Myra, protector of children, worker of miracles, saint of the true church. These relics were obtained lawfully, carried with reverence, and brought to this place for burial in consecrated ground that belongs to my family by ancient right." A pause. Then he continues, "Let those who doubt examine their own faith. Let those who believe give thanks. These remains have been blessed by holy men in 3 kingdoms. They have been in the presence of princes and paupers. Now they come to rest here in this church of St. Nicholas, that their presence might sanctify this ground and bring grace to all who worship within these walls." The speech has the quality of rehearsal, words chosen carefully and delivered with practiced emphasis. You listen without judgment. The claim is extraordinary, but the sincerity seems genuine. Whether the bones are truly those of St. Nicholas or not, the knight believes they are. That conviction is real, whatever the underlying truth might be. Father Coleman steps forward and begins the liturgy for burial of holy relics. The Latin phrases wash over you, familiar from countless masses, but not understood in their specific meaning. You know the rhythm of the responses, the moments when the congregation should kneel or stand, or make the sign of the cross. The ceremony proceeds, prayers, incense, holy water sprinkled over the wrapped relics. The smoke from the thurible rises toward the high ceiling, curling in slow patterns, adding its scent to the cold air. After perhaps an hour, Father Coleman signals to you and to one of the knights. Together, you approach the covered platform. The cloth is carefully removed, revealing a reliquary underneath. It is beautifully crafted, made of oak, bound with iron bands, the wood dark with age or treatment. On the lid, a cross has been carved, simple and clean. You lift the reliquary from the platform. It is heavier than expected, but not impossibly so. The weight of wood and iron and whatever lies within. You and the knight carry it to the crypt, moving slowly, careful not to stumble on the stone floor. At the edge of the crypt you pause. The capstones have been arranged to create an opening at one end, just wide enough to lower the reliquary through. You and the knight kneel, adjusting your grip, preparing for the descent. The reliquary is lowered carefully into the crypt. It rests on the stone floor you laid weeks ago, fitting properly within the space surrounded by walls you built with mortar and care. Father Coleman approaches with a candle. He holds it so the light falls into the crypt, illuminating the reliquary, allowing everyone present to see where it now rests. More prayers, More incense. The liturgy continues. Finally, Father Coleman signals that the crypt should be sealed. You and 2 other men lift the prepared capstone and position it over the opening. The stone is heavy, requiring careful coordination. You guide it into place, feeling it settle onto the mortar you applied earlier, checking that the fit is correct. The crypt is closed. The reliquary is sealed beneath stone. Whatever the truth of its contents, they are now permanently interred in the Church of St. Nicholas in Newtown, County Kilkenny. The congregation begins to disperse slowly. The knights remain, speaking with Father Coleman in low voices. The villagers file out, returning to their cottages and workshops, resuming the routines that were briefly interrupted by ceremony. You remain to clean up. The candles are extinguished. The trestle is removed. The church returns to its normal state, except now there is a sealed crypt near the altar and a reliquary resting within it, and a claim of sanctity that will be debated and believed and questioned for as long as this church stands. The knights remain in the settlement for 2 days. They are housed in the better cottages, provided with food from stores offered out of obligation and custom. The presence of armed men creates a brief change in the settlement's rhythm, but life continues around them, steady and persistent. You continue your normal work. The churchyard still requires maintenance. There are always small repairs needed. Normal life does not pause for ceremonies or claims of sanctity. Let your breath deepen. The extraordinary moment has passed. The ordinary returns, as it always does. The work is familiar. Checking the churchyard wall for frost damage, clearing paths, tending to the small, constant needs that keep the boundary between consecrated and common ground clearly marked. Your hands know this work. Your body moves through the tasks without thought, following patterns worn smooth by repetition. The crypt is sealed now. The reliquary rests beneath stone. Whatever truth or mystery it contains is hidden, permanent, unchanging. Your work is complete. The structure is sound. That is all you can know with certainty, and certainty is not required for rest. The body rests in uncertainty as easily as in knowledge. On the 2nd day, one of the knights approaches while you work on the wall. He watches you fit stones together, pack mortar between them, check that each piece sits firmly. He speaks briefly about the quality of the work, about the soundness of the structure. His words are acknowledgement, approval, nothing more is needed. He asks a question about belief, about authenticity. You answer with the truth you know. You cannot say what is real or false in matters beyond your craft. You know stone and earth. The rest is mystery, and mystery does not require resolution. Mystery does not require resolution. Let that settle. Some things remain unknown, and that is acceptable. The knight seems satisfied with this answer. He departs. You return to your work on the wall, fitting another stone, then another, the rhythm unchanged, the pattern continuing as it always has. The knights leave the next morning. Their procession moves south, back toward Thomastown. The settlement watches them go with quiet relief. The brief interruption is over. The familiar routines reassert themselves. Life continues as it did before, with one addition: a sealed crypt in the church floor, a mystery held safe beneath stone. And so the work goes on, stone upon stone, day upon day. The rhythm persists. The days that follow the night's departure blur together in comfortable repetition. Wake, fire, work, food, sleep. The pattern is ancient and unchanging. Your body knows it completely. Your body knows its rhythms completely. Right now, settling into stillness. The weight of rest. The cold deepens as December progresses. The paths between buildings freeze solid overnight. Your breath hangs in thick clouds each morning when you step outside. The air tastes of ice and wood smoke. You spend hours each day maintaining tools, scraping rust from metal with patient, repetitive strokes, oiling blades that will not be used for weeks but must be kept ready, checking handles for cracks, wrapping them in strips of leather where the wood has worn thin. Repetitive motion. Steady work. The mind quiets when the hands are busy with simple tasks. There is something deeply satisfying about this maintenance. The tools spread before you on the workbench, the smell of oil and metal, the simple satisfaction of taking something dull and making it sharp, something rough and making it smooth. Time passes without measurement. Hours feel like minutes. Minutes feel like nothing at all. You sharpen chisels by candlelight, the whetstone making its steady whisper against a steel. Back and forth, back and forth. The motion is hypnotic. The angle must be precise, but the precision comes from feel, not thought. Your hands know the correct pressure, the correct rhythm. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, like waves, like breath. The steady rhythm of small work in quiet hours. Some evenings you simply tend the fire, adding wood at intervals, watching flames move through the grain, the cottage warm around you, the darkness complete outside. Nothing requiring your attention beyond the next piece of wood, the next small adjustment to keep the heat steady through the night. This is winter work, slow work, the kind that fills hours without effort, that occupies the hands while the mind rests, that asks nothing beyond presence and patience. Presence and patience, all that is needed now. Your breath, the darkness, the quiet settling of everything into stillness. And so the days continue, one into another. The work is enough. The rhythm is enough. Nothing more is required. 3 weeks pass before the first pilgrim arrives. You have almost forgotten about the relics in the routine of daily work. Winter has taken full hold. The ground is frozen solid. No graves can be dug. Your work shifts entirely to maintenance and repair. You are patching a section of the churchyard wall when you notice her. An old woman, walking slowly along the road from the south, leaning heavily on a staff. Her cloak is thin and patched. Her boots are wrapped in cloth for extra warmth. She moves with the painful deliberation of someone whose joints ache with every step. She approaches the church and you watch as Father Coleman emerges to greet her. They speak briefly. She gestures toward the church. He nods and opens the door for her. She's inside for more than an hour. When she emerges, her face is wet with tears, but there is something lighter about her bearing, as if some burden has been partially lifted. You return to your work on the wall, but you think about her through the rest of the day. What brought an old woman on that difficult journey in winter? What did she pray for beside the crypt? What did she hope St. Nicholas, if he truly rests there, might do for her? That evening, you mention the pilgrim to Father Coleman when you see him at evening prayer. She came from 2 days' journey south, he tells you. Her grandson is sick, a fever that will not break. The local priest has prayed over the child, but the fever continues. She heard about the relics of St. Nicholas and decided to make the journey to pray for her grandson's healing. Did you tell her the relics are not confirmed, you ask? I told her the bishop has not authenticated them, Father Coleman says carefully. But I also told her that God hears prayers wherever they are offered, and that the faith she brought to this place matters more than the bones beneath the stone. What did she leave as an offering, you ask, curious about this custom you're beginning to observe. A bundle of dried lavender, Father Coleman says. She apologized that it was not more, but she is poor, and the lavender is from her own garden. I told her it was a beautiful gift. The next week, 2 more pilgrims arrive. A middle-aged man who walks with a limp, seeking relief from pain that has plagued him for years. And a young woman, recently married, praying for the blessing of children. Each one kneels before the crypt for an extended time. Each one leaves some small offering. The man leaves 3 copper coins. The woman leaves a small wooden cross she carved herself. Father Coleman collects these offerings and places them in a wooden box he keeps in the sacristy. He shows you the contents one day when you're helping him repair a loose shutter. These gifts are not wealth, he says, but they represent sacrifice. The copper coins might have bought bread. The lavender could have been sold at market. The cross took hours to carve. These people gave what they could. What will you do with the offerings, you ask? Use them for the poor, Father Coleman says. That seems appropriate. If St. Nicholas truly rests here, he was known for his care of the poor. If these are not his bones, then at least the belief they inspire can do some good in the world. This logic satisfies you. The material reality of the offerings can be separated from the uncertain spiritual reality of what inspired them. Money can feed the hungry, regardless of whether the relics are authentic. That seems right somehow. In the deep cold of January, when outdoor work is impossible, and you spend days confined to your cottage or doing minimal tasks, Father Coleman asks you to teach. Teach what? You ask, confused by the request. Your trade, Father Coleman says. There is a boy in the settlement, young Martin, son of the potter. He is 12 years old. His father died last year. The family struggles. The boy needs to learn a trade that can support him. You are hesitant. You have never taught anyone. You are not good with words. Your knowledge exists in your hands, not in your ability to explain. I am not a teacher, you tell Father Coleman. No one is a teacher until they teach, Father Coleman replies. The boy is willing. The family is desperate. You know the trade better than anyone else in the settlement. Please, at least try. And so Martin comes to you 3 mornings a week, a thin boy with serious eyes and hands that are already calloused from helping his mother with whatever work she can find. He is quiet, watchful, reminds you of yourself at that age. You start with tools, teaching him the names, the purposes, the proper care. He learns quickly, his young mind absorbing information that took you years to internalize. Within a week, he can identify every tool in your shed and explain its basic function. Then you move to materials, sand and lime and water, how to judge quality, how to mix mortar in small batches, practicing the proportions, learning to recognize proper consistency through feel and observation. He makes mistakes. Of course he makes mistakes. The mortar is too wet or too dry. He uses the wrong ratio. He fails to mix thoroughly, but he learns from each error. You can see the understanding growing behind his eyes. By February, you take him to the churchyard and show him how to repair a wall. He works alongside you, handing you stones, watching as you place them, occasionally trying himself under your supervision. His attempts are clumsy at first. The stones wobble. The mortar application is uneven. But gradually, with practice, he improves. You do not praise him much. That is not your way. But when he does something correctly, you nod. When he makes a good decision, you acknowledge it. That stone sits well, you say, or you mix that batch properly. Small confirmations that his work is acceptable. The teaching surprises you by being satisfying, watching knowledge transfer from your hands to his, seeing him begin to understand stone and mortar the way you do, knowing that some of what your father taught you will continue beyond your own life. By March, Martin can mix mortar without supervision. He can select appropriate stones for a simple repair. He can use the basic tools competently, if not yet masterfully. He has a long way to go before he is a true mason. But he has made a beginning. You have done well, Father Coleman tells you one evening. The boy has learned more in these months than I dared hope. He is a good student, you say, attentive, willing to work. That matters more than natural talent. Will you continue teaching him? Father Coleman asks. You consider. The teaching takes time from your own work. But Martin is useful now, able to help with simple tasks, actually making some jobs easier rather than harder. And there is something right about passing the knowledge forward, about ensuring the trade continues. I will continue, you say, until he is ready to work alone, or decides this is not the life he wants. March brings the first real warmth. The frozen ground begins to yield. Water runs in rivulets across the settlement as snow melts from roofs and ice breaks apart in the fields. The earth, which has been hard as stone for months, starts to soften. This is the season when your work shifts dramatically. Graves can be dug again. The dead who have been waiting Their bodies, preserved by cold and stored in outbuildings, can finally be buried. There are 4 such burials waiting: an elderly man who died in late December, 2 children who succumbed to winter illness, a woman who died giving birth in February, all preserved by the cold, all awaiting the ground's consent to be buried. You dig the graves over the course of a week. The earth is still difficult, not yet fully thawed, but manageable with effort. Each excavation follows the same pattern. Measure and mark the plot. Remove the top layer of grass and soil. Dig down 4 feet. Keep the walls straight. Ensure the bottom is level and oriented east to west, as tradition requires. The families gather for each burial. Father Coleman conducts the services. The prayers are said. The bodies are lowered into the earth. You begin the work of filling each grave, shovel by shovel, until the earth is mounded over the dead, and flowers can be planted to mark the spot. The families gather for each burial. Father Coleman conducts the services. The prayers are said. The bodies are lowered into the earth. You begin the work of filling each grave, shovel by shovel, until the earth is mounded over the dead, and flowers can be planted to mark the spot. Another breath here. The work is the work, simple, necessary, requiring only your hands and patience. The earth accepts what is given to it. Soft soil covers shrouded forms. The weight of earth settles. The graves take their shape, mounded slightly above the surrounding ground too. Allow for settling over time. You smooth the surface with the back of your shovel. Pat it firm. Check that water will run off rather than pool. These are the same movements for every burial, the same attention to small details. The work does not change whether the grave is honoured or ordinary, whether the person was known or unknown. The earth receives all offerings with the same patient silence. The earth receives all things with patient silence, as you are received now, by rest, by stillness, by the darkness that asks nothing of you. Martin helps with some of this work. He is strong enough now to handle a shovel for extended periods. His technique improves with each grave. By the 4th burial, he can dig a section on his own, while you work on another part. The labour goes faster with 2 pairs of hands. The spring continues. The ground continues to soften. The work continues in its steady rhythm. This thought is neither comforting nor disturbing. It simply is. A fact of existence. You continue your work, filling graves, tending the churchyard, maintaining the boundary between the consecrated and the common, while recognizing that the boundary exists primarily in human minds and practices rather than in the nature of the ground itself. Martin helps with some of this work. He is strong enough now to handle a shovel for extended periods. His technique improves with each grave. By the 4th burial, he can dig a section on his own while you work on another part. The labour goes faster with 2 pairs of hands. The pilgrims come more frequently now. Travel is easier in good weather. Word has continued to spread about the relics at Newtown Jerpoint. Some come seeking miracles, others come simply to pray at a place they believe is holy. You observe them from your work in the churchyard. They arrive in various conditions. Some walk, their feet dust-covered and blistered from days of travel. Some ride horses or mules. A few arrive by cart, too infirm to walk long distances, but determined to reach this place. Each pilgrim approaches the church with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. They enter. They kneel before the crypt. They pray. The specifics of their petitions are private, whispered or thought rather than spoken aloud. But the general categories are predictable: healing for themselves or loved ones, protection for travellers, intercession for souls in purgatory, the usual catalogue of human need and fear. Summer transforms the settlement. The fields are green. The river runs clear and swift. The days stretch long. The sun warming stone and earth that were frozen for so many months. You have learned not to ask about miracles. Whether they occur or not is beyond your ability to verify. Some pilgrims leave claiming to feel better. Others depart looking unchanged. The efficacy of prayer is not something you can measure with the tools you use for measuring stone and earth. What you do notice is the change in the church itself. Father Coleman has begun to maintain it more carefully. The floor is swept more frequently. Candles are kept burning even during the day. The altar cloth is cleaner, the sacred vessels brighter. The presence of pilgrims has created a subtle pressure toward higher standards of presentation. The offerings continue to accumulate. Father Coleman keeps careful records, copper coins primarily, but also occasionally silver. Gifts of food that are shared with the settlement's poor. Small items of value left by those who have little else to give. A carved wooden cross, a piece of worked leather, a bundle of dried herbs. This wealth, such as it is, creates its own complications. Where there is wealth, there is temptation. Father Coleman has begun locking the church when it is unoccupied, a new practice, previously unnecessary in a settlement where everyone knows everyone and theft was rare. Your work during these summer months is varied. There are new graves to dig, though thankfully few. The season of sickness is winter. Summer brings its own dangers, accidents in the fields, and drownings in the river, but overall the work of burial is lighter. Instead, you focus on improvements. The churchyard wall needs significant repairs. Years of frost and weather have taken their toll. You spend days removing damaged stones and replacing them with new ones, ensuring that the boundary between consecrated ground and ordinary land remains clearly marked. Martin works alongside you for much of this. He is becoming capable, not a master yet, but competent enough to be truly useful rather than merely willing. His hands are developing the calluses of the trade. His back is growing stronger from the constant bending and lifting. He is learning, as you once learned, through the patient accumulation of practice. You also begin work on a proper stone marker for the crypt. Until now, the floor itself with its carved inscription has been the only indication of what lies beneath. But Father Coleman has commissioned something more elaborate, a raised stone platform, perhaps 6 inches high, that will sit atop the crypt and provide a dedicated surface for pilgrims to kneel upon. The work is straightforward, but time-consuming. You select limestone blocks of uniform size. You cut them carefully to create smooth surfaces that will fit together tightly. You prepare mortar and begin the construction, layer by layer, building up a rectangular platform that matches the dimensions of the crypt beneath. The inscription you carved earlier will remain visible beneath this new structure, preserved as the permanent record of what the crypt claims to contain. The platform will simply make the space more formal, more clearly designated as a place of pilgrimage and prayer. As you work, you sometimes pause to watch the pilgrims. They kneel, they pray, they rise and depart, some looking lighter, others unchanged. You return to your work without analysis or judgment. Let your breath deepen, observation without analysis, seeing without needing to understand. You know stone, you know earth, you know the properties of mortar and the behaviour of frost. This knowledge fills your hands and guides your work. It is enough. The pilgrims continue to come. The offerings continue to accumulate. The church continues its rhythms. And you continue your work, tending walls, clearing paths, maintaining the boundary between consecrated ground and the surrounding land. The summer continues, long and warm, each day much like the one before. In late August, word arrives that the Bishop of Ossory will visit the church. The news creates a change in Father Coleman's manner, more urgency in his movements, more attention to small details, but the work itself remains unchanged. You are asked to help with preparations. The path from the road to the church must be cleared and smoothed. The churchyard must be tended. The church building needs minor repairs, a shutter, a leak, small things that become temporarily important. Breathe here. Let the urgency belong to someone else. It does not need to be yours. You work through the days leading up to the visit with steady focus. The tasks are simple. Clear the path, repair the shutter, patch the leak. Your hands know how to do these things without thought. The work is familiar, repetitive, requiring no special effort. The bishop arrives on a Thursday afternoon. You watch from the churchyard as the procession approaches. Horses, riders, banners moving slowly through the settlement. The kind of formality that belongs to ceremonies and official business. The group enters the church, the doors close, hours pass. You continue your work, trimming grass around grave markers, checking stones for stability, doing the small tasks that always need doing. The work continues regardless of what happens behind closed doors. Stone and earth require tending. The rhythm does not pause. The doors open in late afternoon. The bishop's party emerges. Brief conversations, formal farewells. They mount their horses and depart the same way they came, slowly, with measured dignity. Father Coleman remains outside for a time, standing quietly. Eventually, he approaches and speaks with you briefly. The bishop has made his decision. The relics will remain. The crypt will stand unchanged. The structure is approved as built. Only the claims about what lies beneath must be spoken of carefully, without certainty, acknowledging mystery rather than declaring truth. This seems fitting. The physical work is verified. The spiritual questions remain open. Some things can be measured and confirmed, others cannot. This is simply how the world is. Some things are certain, others are not. Both states can exist without disturbance. Rest does not require resolution. You return to your work. The stones continue to fit together properly. The mortar continues to cure. The crypt remains sealed, holding its mystery safe, asking nothing of you beyond what you have already given. Honest work, properly done, enduring beyond questions. And so the rhythm continues. Stone and earth, day and season. The work that persists regardless of declarations or judgments, needing only patience and presence, and the steady application of skill learned long ago and practiced until it becomes as natural as breathing. As natural as breathing. In and out. Nothing more required, nothing more needed. The summer continues toward autumn. The work continues. Everything continues. Steady and patient and complete. The churchyard requires constant tending. Each morning you walk the perimeter, moving slowly, observing. The same path every day. The same careful attention to small details. The rhythm becomes meditation. Walk with him now in your mind. Slow steps, observing. Nothing urgent, nothing requiring action, beyond gentle attention. Here, a section of wall where a stone has shifted slightly. You note it. Not today's work, but soon. Tomorrow, perhaps, or the day after. There is no rush. The stone has held for months. It will hold for days more. There, a grave that has settled. The earth over it compacting slowly, creating a shallow depression. You will add soil and pack it properly. Not now. Later. When the time feels right. When you have finished the other tasks. Everything in its order. Everything in its time. Everything in its time. No hurry, no urgency. Just the slow attention to what needs tending. Beyond that, a yew tree with a dead branch. It should be removed before wind takes it. But the air is still today. Tomorrow is soon enough. Or the day after. The branch has hung there for weeks. It will wait another day. You continue walking. Your feet know the path. Around the northern edge where the wall meets the road. Along the eastern side where the oldest graves lie. South toward the river. West back to the church. The same circuit every morning. The path worn smooth by your daily passage. Sometimes you stop at certain graves, not for any particular reason, just to stand quietly, to acknowledge the names you remember, to place a hand on stone warmed by sun or cold with frost, feeling the temperature, the texture, the patient endurance of limestone. Feel that stone now in your imagination. Smooth, cool, solid, requiring nothing from you, simply there, patient and unchanging. The grass grows over the dead. You trim it periodically, keeping it neat, keeping the graves visible and tended. The work is simple. Repetitive, the scythe makes its steady whisper through green stems. Back and forth, back and forth. The motion is ancient. Countless hands before yours have made these same movements. Countless hands after yours will do the same. The churchyard is quiet except for these small sounds. The scythe through grass, your boots on the worn path, birds in the yew trees, wind moving through branches, the distant sound of the river. Nothing dramatic, nothing that demands attention. Just the quiet accumulation of ordinary moments. Just the quiet accumulation of moments like this one and this one, each complete, each sufficient. You work until midday, then rest in shade, eat bread and cheese, drink water from a leather flask, watch clouds move across the sky. The work is not hard, it is simply present. Always there, always needing your attention in small manageable ways. In the afternoon, you tend to whatever repair you noted in the morning, resetting a stone, filling a settled grave, trimming a branch. Each task takes time but not much, an hour perhaps, sometimes less. The work is never urgent, never overwhelming, just constant, persistent, like the seasons themselves, like breath, constant, persistent, requiring no thought, simply continuing. And when light begins to fail, you gather your tools, clean them, store them in their places. The shed smells of earth and oil and old wood. Everything has its spot. Everything returns to where it belongs at the end of each day. The pattern repeats tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. The rhythm continues, steady and patient, asking nothing beyond presence and attention, and the willingness to tend what needs tending. The rhythm continues, the work continues, and you now continue into deeper rest, into the quiet spaces between tasks, into the stillness that holds all work, all motion, all life. The churchyard settles into evening. You settle into rest. Everything settles, everything quiets, everything returns to the stillness from which all things emerge and to which all things return. September brings the harvest. The fields around the settlement are cut and gathered. Grain is threshed and stored. Animals are slaughtered and preserved for winter. The settlement prepares for the cycle to begin again. You complete the platform over the crypt. It stands 6 inches high, a clearly defined rectangular space that draws the eye and provides a formal kneeling surface for pilgrims. The work is solid. The stones are well fitted. The structure will endure for generations if properly maintained. Pilgrims continue to arrive, though in fewer numbers now. The bishop's visit and his measured judgment have been reported more widely. Some pilgrims still come seeking miracles. Others come simply because they're curious about a place involved in controversy. The nature of the visits has changed slightly, but the visits continue. You dig 3 graves in September. An infant who lived only 2 days. A farmer killed when his horse kicked him in the head. A woman who simply stopped breathing in her sleep, her heart having worn out after 70 years of steady work. Each burial is conducted with proper ceremony. Father Coleman speaks the prayers. The families mourn. The earth receives what is given to it. The cycle continues, as it always has and always will. As the month progresses and October approaches, you notice changes in the light. The sun hangs lower in the sky. The shadows grow longer. The air carries a hint of the cold that will eventually return and dominate the landscape for months. You begin preparations for winter. Firewood must be split and stacked. The cottage must be checked for gaps where cold air might infiltrate. Tools must be examined and maintained so they will be ready when spring allows work to resume. The church too requires preparation. The roof is inspected for damage. The gutters are cleaned. Small repairs are completed while the weather still permits outdoor work. Everything is made ready for the season, when storms and snow will test every structure. Father Coleman seems more peaceful now than he was in the spring and summer. The bishop's judgment, while not a complete vindication, has provided clarity. The uncertainty that weighed on him has been replaced by a defined situation that he can work within. "We will continue to serve the faithful who come here," he tells you one afternoon, as you work on securing a shutter that has become loose. "We will maintain the church to the best of our ability. We will neither promote nor deny the claims about the relics. That is our path forward. It is a reasonable path, a sustainable path, one that acknowledges complexity rather than demanding certainty." October brings rain, not the brief showers of summer, but sustained precipitation that lasts for days, turning paths to mud and creating standing water in every low place. The River Nore rises, its brown water churning with runoff from the surrounding hills. Work becomes difficult. The churchyard, usually firm underfoot, becomes treacherous. Every step requires care to avoid slipping in mud or sinking into soft ground. You spend days just managing drainage, digging channels to direct water away from graves that threaten to flood, reinforcing walls that are weakening under the constant moisture. The crypt, you're pleased to note, remains perfectly dry. The raised platform you built keeps it above the water that occasionally pools on the church floor during the worst storms. The mortar has cured hard and water-resistant. The structure is doing exactly what it was designed to do: protect what lies beneath from the elements. The rains finally break in late October. The sky clears. Cold, clean air sweeps down from the north. The ground, thoroughly saturated, begins the slow process of drying out. November brings frost again. The cycle turns, summer to autumn to winter. The days shorten. The cold deepens. The settlement prepares once more for the months of endurance ahead. Martin has become truly useful now. He can handle many tasks without supervision. He understands the rhythms of the work, the way each season brings its own requirements. You find yourself relying on him more, trusting his judgment in small matters, allowing him to make decisions about which stones to use or how much mortar to mix. This partnership changes the nature of your work. You are no longer alone with your thoughts all day. Martin's presence requires you to explain things occasionally, to articulate knowledge that has lived only in your hands. This is good for both of you. He learns faster when you explain. You understand your own craft better when forced to put it into words. December arrives. The year completes its circle. The settlement prepares for Christmas, for the celebration of birth in the darkness of winter, for the hope that light will return despite the cold. The Church of St. Nicholas will observe the feast of its patron on December 6th. Father Coleman plans a special Mass. Pilgrims are not expected given the weather and the season, but the local faithful will attend, and that is sufficient. You help prepare the church for the feast. Extra candles are placed and lit. The floor is swept until no trace of dirt remains. The space is made as welcoming as it can be when stone walls hold no heat and breath forms clouds in the cold air. On the evening before the feast, you find yourself alone in the church. Father Coleman has retired to his house. The settlement is quiet. You stand before the crypt platform, looking at the inscription you carved nearly a year ago. The letters are still clear. The stone is unchanged. The structure you built endures exactly as you expected it would. But the meaning has shifted somehow. What began as a question about authenticity has become something more complex, a meditation on faith and doubt, on certainty and mystery, on the relationship between what can be verified and what must be believed. You are not a man of great learning or theological sophistication. You are a digger of graves and a setter of stones. But even you can recognize that this crypt has become more than just a burial place. It has become a symbol, a focal point for questions that may never be fully answered. The letters are still clear. The stone is unchanged. The structure you built endures exactly as you expected it would. Breathe here. Stone endures, work endures, nothing more needs to be understood. People have prayed over the crypt with real faith. People have found comfort here. The crypt holds what it holds, and people bring what they bring. Both are simply true, without needing to be reconciled or understood. You leave the church as snow begins to fall, small flakes at first, then larger, more substantial. The settlement is white and quiet under the falling snow. Smoke rises from chimneys. Life continues in its persistent, ordinary way. Life continues, breath continues, the simple persistence of things, needing no explanation. Tomorrow is the feast of St. Nicholas. Tomorrow there will be special prayers and observances. Tomorrow the church will be filled with the faithful. But tonight the church rests empty and cold. The crypt rests sealed beneath stone. The bones rest in darkness. And the snow falls softly on the church and the settlement and the fields beyond, covering everything in white, making no distinction between anything at all. You leave the church as snow begins to fall. Small flakes at first, then larger, more substantial. The settlement is white and quiet under the falling snow. Smoke rises from chimneys. Life continues in its persistent, ordinary way. Tomorrow is the feast of St. Nicholas. Tomorrow there will be special prayers and observances. Tomorrow the church will be filled with the faithful who have lived alongside this mystery for a year without resolving it. But tonight the church rests empty and cold. The crypt rests sealed beneath stone. The bones, whoever they belong to, rest in darkness. And the snow falls softly on the church and the settlement and the fields beyond, covering everything in white, making no distinction between the sacred and the ordinary. Spring arrives again. The cycle completes and begins once more. The ground softens, the work returns to familiar rhythms, digging, building, tending. The same patterns your father followed, the same patterns his father followed, the pattern that continues forward, unchanged, unchanging. Let yourself settle deeper now. The story is complete, the cycle is complete. All that remains is rest. You dig a grave in March. An elderly man, finally released from a long life. The earth accepts him easily, as it accepts all things. The work is the same as it has always been. Measure, mark, dig. The body knows these movements completely. Martin works beside you now, his hands becoming skilled, his understanding deepening, the knowledge passing forward as it passed to you, through demonstration and practice, through patience and repetition, the trade continuing, the craft enduring. The crypt remains sealed beneath the church floor. The platform you built stands solid. The inscription you carved remains clear. Pilgrims come. Prayers are offered. The mystery endures, neither resolved nor requiring resolution. Mystery endures, questions remain. And rest comes regardless. Sleep comes regardless. The body knows how to let go. The seasons turn, winter to spring, spring to summer, summer to autumn, autumn to winter. The wheel continuing its ancient rotation, the work adapting to each season's requirements, but remaining essentially unchanged. Stone and earth, mortar and time, the patient accumulation of small efforts. You wake before dawn, build the fire, eat simple food. Walk to the church through air that might be cold or warm depending on the season. Work until light fails. Return to your cottage. Sleep. The pattern repeats, day after day, year after year. The rhythm as natural as breathing, as natural as breathing. Your breath now, slow and deep, the pattern of rest beginning, the body letting go. Some days you stand in the churchyard and look at the crypt through the church door, the stone you placed, the inscription you carved, your small hammer mark visible in the corner if you know where to look. The work is done. The structure is sound. It will endure long after you return to the earth yourself. But that is distant. Not yet, not tonight. Tonight there is only the fire, the cottage, the familiar. Weight of blankets, the darkness settling over the settlement like a gentle hand. The church stands quiet on its small rise. The river flows past, patient and persistent. The fields lie still under starlight. Everything rests, everything settles, everything returns to the stillness that is always present beneath the surface of motion. Everything returns to stillness, including you. Right now, settling, releasing, letting the weight of the day, the weight of all days, be held by something larger. You are Thomas of Jerpoint, digger of earth, setter of stones, keeper of the boundary between the consecrated and the common. Your hands know their work. Your body knows its rhythms. Tonight, they know how to rest. The crypt holds its mystery. The seasons turn their wheel. The work continues. And you, having done what was required, having built what needed building, having tended what needed tending, you rest. You rest now. Deep and complete, the work is done. The day is finished. All that remains is the quiet dark, the gentle settling, the slow descent into sleep that asks nothing of you, that requires nothing from you, that simply receives you, as the earth receives all things, with patience and without judgment. May your dreams be as quiet as stone in darkness. May your rest be as deep as winter earth. May sleep find you easily, hold you gently, and release you refreshed when morning comes again. But morning is far away. Dawn is distant. Now there is only night, only rest, only the deep, complete stillness of work completed and body released. Breathe now. 3 slow breaths, feeling the weight beneath you, the darkness around you, the quiet settling of everything into rest. In and out, in and out, in and out. The work is done. The story is told. The settlement sleeps. The church stands. The crypt endures. And you, having walked this path with Thomas through cold December earth, through stone and mortar, through the patient rhythm of the mason's trade, you are released now into your own rest. Good night. Good night. The work is finished for today. The tools are cleaned and stored. The sun is setting over the fields, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. You make your way back to your cottage as evening settles over the settlement. Inside, you build up the fire and prepare your simple meal. The cottage is warm. The day's labour is complete. The crypt stands as you built it, solid and secure beneath the church floor. You can rest now, as the settlement rests, as the earth rests after yielding to your labour. The mystery you housed will endure long after your hands have stilled, and your own bones rest in the ground you knew so well. May your dreams be as quiet as stone settling into place. May your rest be as deep as the ground beneath ancient walls. May peace find you as certainly as spring finds the earth, bringing renewal and warmth after winter's long darkness. The crypt holds its secrets, the seasons turn, the work continues, and in the silence of stone and soil, all questions find their rest. Good night.